So, today on Success and Excuses podcast, we have a very, very special guest. Not the first time she's been on the podcast, but the second time she's been on the podcast. Ellie McKay from On a Mission 2.0.
Oh, Mr. Fleming, what a pleasure. We've came full circle, and it's a bit strange to be back here in the same studio where it all began.
Absolutely.
Sat in the same seat, but the boot is on the other foot.
The bit is on the other foot. So for those that might not have watched the first episode, so our very first episode, so if you haven't watched it, get watching. It was actually Ellie. The story for why I started this was Ellie. I'd been on Ellie's podcast and Ellie said, James, you need to do your own podcast. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And then it was January. It came up in January and you're like, done that podcast yet? And I'm like, I promise I'll book it. And I think it was the next day, I phoned up the podcast studio in Glasgow and I just booked it. So our very first podcast was you interviewing me about the podcast.
Yeah.
And now we're in this is podcast 26.
Wow.
So we're halfway through the year.
Yeah.
We've done 26 bloody podcasts since that day.
Congratulations.
And today it's all about you. So Ellie, give an introduction.
You know what though, can I just say it's an absolute privilege to be here, but really to just see how far you've progressed in your own podcasting journey within such a short space of time.
Thanks to you as well. You have been helping me.
Yeah, but you've done the hard work, and I think, the reason that this all came about was because of you, because of your energy, because of the relationships that you have with people. When you're having conversations, you've got a unique skill, a unique talent of just being able to make people relax, which is the feedback that I get as well. But you also get them to open up in a way that not all podcasters can do.
Oh, I know the feeling you did it to me.
Well, I made you cry. I made you cry for the first time.
Right.
And I looked over, and your lovely wife, Enos, who came down to Doncaster with you to the studio, I'm looking over to the side and she was in tears as well, and you were in tears, and it was really emotional. But it is a unique skill to be able to bring out the best in people and not just have the surface level conversations as well. It's real, it's raw, and that's what people want. And the amount of conversations that you and I had, we struck up a friendship. We've followed each other online for years. We struck up a friendship last year when you made the trip down to come on my podcast. And since then, the amount of conversations that we had, that I've said, bloody hell, if the cameras were rolling here, people would have got so much value from this. And that's now what you've materialised with Success or Excuses. And now you're getting to see what I've been telling you, which is the power of podcasting. And it's not just down to your download numbers. It does take a long time to build that commercial value. But for me, somebody asked me the question, name of the podcast, On a Mission. Ellie, what is your mission? And it's quite simple, really. For me, it's to learn, to grow, and to share that with other people. The podcast is like my university. If there's anything or anyone that you want to connect with, you've got such a unique opportunity to be able to connect with them one-to-one, and quite often, like we've just said there, build a friendship with them. And the reality is, we're all busy people. We all get lots of messages and things. We don't really have time when somebody messages us to meet for a coffee to pick our brains. But people are so much more receptive to coming on a podcast.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking at the start, when my numbers were really low and it was a little bit demoralising in terms of achieving the outcomes that I wanted to, having a particular conversation. I remember who it was with. It was one of my earliest episodes with Johnny Nelson, the ex-world champion boxer, and he's now a presenter on Sky Sports. He's just a very wise guy. He's really intelligent, and we've got so many similar interests. And we sat and we spoke for hours. And I remember saying to Kira, my videographer, podcast manager, business partner, you name it, PA, admin assistant. She's
Super Kira.
Super Kira.
By the way, I know Kira really well. She is super.
She is definitely, for anyone who knows us both, the brains behind the operation. But I remember saying to her driving away from that podcast, I says, if nobody else listens to this is one of the best experiences that I've ever had. I've learned so much from it, and to be able to just have that on a personal level and then share it with people, it just feels like a privilege.
Amazing. Listen, something you said in is the university. Your podcast is almost like your university in life.
Yeah.
And That's probably what I got for watching your stuff. I think what impressed me most, and I'm going to dive into this a wee bit. What impressed me most when I met you is pure resilience. Like, you have got grit coming at your arse, literally, and I mean that like in a good way, right? You have got grit like no one else I've ever met. You're not scared to stand up and say no. You know, you've got grit, and that oozes at you. And I said to you, I think I remember at the time, I thought, I want, because you live and breathe the podcast that you used to have, because people be talking about grit and determination and success and excuses on your podcast, that On a Mission. And I was like, whoa, it's really, really unusual to meet somebody who at that time was going through a pretty tough time. We won't get into it, but a pretty tough time. I mean, a really fucking tough time, let's be honest. But you were smiling and you were full of grit and determination, and your outlook in life was incredible, right? Especially when you hear the story. Well, last week this happened. I won't get into any details, of course, but you were saying like, well, last week this was happening, and you're like, but here I am today, and you're ready to go. And you mentioned Johnny Nelson, right? I want to kind of, how did you build it? How did you build that? What was it in you that you thought, right, these are the people I want to go, and this is my mission, this is why I'm doing it? What was that?
Oh, you massively overestimate me. It wasn't like that at
okay,
all.
well, that's your persona then.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm world class at looking like I've got my shit together when it's really a complete sham. Okay, so it was during COVID. It was 2020. I'm at home with the 3 kids, and there was a lot of positives. We had that beautiful weather. I was really enjoying spending the time with the family. But I'm like you. I'm a very high energy person. I'm a people person. I thrive with that interaction, that stimulation that you get in particular with in-person events. And like the rest of the country, I started to feel like a bit of a caged animal as the week started progressing into months. Because I was the person that used to do the public speaking, I used to go to the masterminds, I used to go to the networking events, I used to be...
Where I first seen you was through the property prodigy type thing. Was the first time I ever followed you through. It was Paul and Billy at the time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was always here, there and everywhere, and I used to get a real kick out of that. So, as I say, as the time sort of kept passing, I started to feel like I was losing my identity a little bit, as a lot of people were at the time. And there was one particular day that my now ex-husband, everything was absolutely tickety-boo. He'd nipped out to the shop to go and get some milk or something like that. We're still in a lockdown or a semi-lockdown situation at this point. And I was actually on a Zoom with Kira, my marketing assistant at the time. And within a very short space of time, everything just went to complete carnage.
I just want to add before you tell this story, Super Kira. Did you want to get me Superman one in there?
I feel like we need to add some sound effects to that as well when we're editing this. So Sammy, my youngest of three children, so he would have been like 2 at the time. Isabella was 3, so Sienna would have been like 7.
So you had a handful anyway?
I had a handful anyway, and we were just about to start potty training with Sam when, anyway, during this particular Zoom call, I turned around and Sam had decided to whip his nappy off, which was full of shit. He'd put his hands in his nappy. He started to run around the kitchen, smearing shit everywhere. I've started to chase him, which he thought was hilarious, thinks it's a big game. Grabs onto a pretty expensive lamp, which was a bit like a sort of glass chandelier vibe. Knocks that over, glass everywhere. I've got Isabella trying to run into the room. I'm screaming, trying to keep her back so she doesn't, really hurt herself. And by the time Mark got back with the milk, approximately 5 minutes later, when it'd all be nice and calm and serene, I'm kind of laid there on the floor, floods of tears, going, I can't do this anymore. And to his credit, he sent me upstairs. He says, I think you need some time to yourself. We just learned about TM meditation just before we went to lockdown. And I went upstairs, took myself away, and did a meditation. Now, this sounds really woo-woo, but during this meditation, I got a download, or whatever you want to call it, clear as day, telling me, and this had not been anything that I had previously thought about or considered.
Must have been somewhere in there.
It must have been somewhere in the subconscious.
And that meditation's brought it right to the forefront.
It's brought it right to the forefront, but it was genuinely not something that I had been, I just hadn't consciously considered it at all, but it was to do these interviews. So at the time, it wasn't a podcast. It was, the thing that had came to me was to do something called the Sunday series, which was
Facebook, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Facebook Lives, and it was like an Alan Carr style vibe, where I was there with my glass of wine on a Sunday night interviewing people.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as I finish that meditation, I know what I'm like. If I don't hold myself to account, I come up with all these ideas and I don't necessarily see them through. Classic entrepreneur, So I sent some voice notes straight away to people that I wanted to interview, so that was it. I was kind of locked in with it, and I was committed to making it happen.
Is that what you made me do?
Exactly what I made you do. And
get it done.
So to my surprise, they said yes. So we got this up and running. I mean, it was very basic. I'm there with my second-hand laptop and a 20 quid microphone from Amazon with zero clue what I'm doing. I'd ordered some sort of ring light that cost me about 7 quid. But to my surprise, quite a lot of people tuned in. There was maybe 50, 100 people on the live, but then afterwards, hundreds of people were watching this recording. And then every week, the numbers were increasing and increasing and increasing. And we did 10 episodes in total. And at the end of the 10 episodes, that's when the world kind of reopened. And I had that sliding doors moment where I thought, I can either make this into something, I can take it somewhere, or I'm just going to call it a day. And it was actually Rob Moore from Progressive Properties who sort of convinced me to launch the podcast.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And he helped me come up with the name, the On a Mission podcast, because I was going to call it Girl on Fire originally. They were my two options, Girl on Fire or On a Mission. So we launched the podcast. But to answer your question, in my usual long-winded fashion, I knew someone at the time who was a property sourcer, had absolutely nothing to do with podcasting, but he'd previously worked in organising sports events and happened to know Ricky Hatton's manager.
Right, okay.
Now, he was a great guy, but he was also, he's a bit of a Del Boy, bit of a wheeler dealer.
Bit of that.
Yeah, so when he's like, I can get you Ricky Hatton, I'm like, of course you can. you know what it's like.
Cha-ching.
Well, I was really sceptical. I was like, as if he can get me Ricky Hatton, what's he going to want to, coming on a brand new podcast? Yeah. Anyway, sure enough, Ricky Hatton said yes. Now, there was obviously a bit of luck involved because we were going into all that. It was like tier 2, tier 3, all that nonsense. If you cast your mind back, people were definitely more receptive to coming on podcasts because their other work commitments or commentaries or punditry completely died off. Now, I think when we recorded that podcast, it was essential travel only. And I think that doing a public service to the British public, like podcasting, is very much an essential service. And that it was originally...
You're an essential service worker.
Exactly. I'm right up there with the surgeons and the nurses. And it was meant to be on Zoom, and then I ended up messaging his manager back and said, what are the chances we could actually come and do this in person? Can we come to Hatton's gym and maybe set it up? It might look quite cool having it in the boxing ring. And he said, well, you're only getting an hour, but either way, whether it's on Zoom or in person, but by all means, you can come in person. So I said to Kira, look, we need to do this because what a great way to build relationships. Yeah. You can go, we can set up the equipment while you're doing that. Take your time.
Oh, what made you think of it going? That's brilliant. The fact that set up, most people are like, we're doing a Zoom and then it's like, we're happy. But you must have been something you're going, nah, I can make this much better.
Much better because it's relationships, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is what matters.
This is what matters. I thought you've got an hour setting up. You've got an hour. I mean, it probably takes you about 15 minutes, but I'm saying just really slow this whole process down. We'll get there. If it takes an hour to set up, I'm going to get there 2 hours early, which we did. And of course, Ricky's been doing some training sessions with the guys and he's mulling around and we strike up conversation and build up that rapport and things that you just wouldn't have got with Zoom. It it would have been you come on, you say, you know,
do your thing.
Well, the thing is, you don't want to, you've got that hour and that's all you've got. So the more time you spend building rapport and striking up a relationship, it's less time to actually do the podcast, which I was also mindful of. But there was a problem, James. The problem was Ciara wasn't a videographer. We didn't have any recording equipment and we didn't know what the fuck we were doing.
Wing it.
Standard. So I remember getting in touch with people I knew at the time that had podcasts or had experience filming. I was like, what do we need to get? We got it all second hand. What lighting do we need to get? I was using all my network to I was tapping into my network, calling in favours. Could you get on a Zoom with Ciara? Can you just demonstrate how you set up these cameras? She's watching YouTube videos. So I remember when I had secured the interview, I was absolutely buzzing. I was jumping up and down my kitchen. So, of course, the first person I got in touch with was Ciara. I was like, you're not going to believe this. I was like, I've got Ricky Hatton coming on the podcast. She's going, oh my God, that's amazing. That's phenomenal. Who's Ricky Hatton? I was like, Ciara, right, go speak to your dad. So she shouts to her dad, Dad, I've got Ricky Hatton. Oh, Ciara, this is amazing. This is brilliant. So anyway, I gave her the option. I says, look, we've got two choices here. I says, I can either bring a videographer in who can come and film it all, or you've got a very unique opportunity here to come and record with a sporting legend. I said, but we can't half-ass this. If you're going to do it, you've got whatever it was, 4 days to become a world-class videographer because I will not accept anything less than perfect. And she was like, yeah, game on, let's do it.
Oh, I love it.
And that was really, you know, it was the good fortune of being able to secure somebody of that calibre, which definitely helped, because although the download numbers weren't particularly high, and actually that's something for anyone who's starting a podcast or who has started a podcast that might be a bit demoralised about the numbers. I remember thinking, when this goes live, I'm going to go through the roof. And that wasn't the reality at all. It wasn't necessarily the big names that attracted the big audience. But what it did do was it positioned me really well. It was that power of association. And I leveraged that interview for all it was worth. I milked it to within an inch of its life. And like I say, that then allowed me to access people like Johnny Nelson and then your Eddie Hearns of this world and other people of that magnitude.
And even bigger, some would say.
James Fleming.
You've had some crackers on, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So when you, I want to go back to the Ricky Hatton thing, and how did it, was it like almost like once you had the momentum, did it just keep? Because I mean, you were huge. I mean, your podcast was massive at one point, like #1 in the UK.
Yeah, it was, and very ironically, I think it was 2 weeks after that we had to take it down. So I was just
your biggest interview of your life, was it not?
Yeah, it was, but you know, it's like that Alanis Morris song, isn't it? You know, do you remember it? Ironic. No man, I'm not going to sing the whole song, but yeah, there was something extremely ironic about that. Now, Stephen Bartlett, who's also been on the podcast, shameless plug, he shared.
No shame at all. Plug it.
He shared this graph. You've seen the curve. It goes like that for anyone watching this on video. You know, you're flatlining, and then you're going gradually up, you're going gradually up. It wasn't really, I think, until we've been going about 18 months that it goes, and then it's quite a steep incline, and then it builds and it builds and it builds. Now, I think there's a statistic, I may, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 95% of podcasts don't get beyond the first year, because it's bloody hard. And I think people massively underestimate
really
it. Well, you know what it's like now it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of resources. It's not just the filming it,
it's really
the marketing.
Doing it for no real return. Return. As you said, the return that I've now realised, and I now really get what you talked about way back then when you taught me into it. The return is that, see the university of life. Yeah. When you hear people's stories.
Yes.
That's a great return, isn't it?
It is, and also, you've obviously.
But other than that, there's not a lot of return.
But I mean, I suppose all it would take. I didn't have a product as a or service per se, but you would only need, I don't know, some big company owner or CEO or
Already
HR manager to come and have a chat with you and think, I'm aligned, because you're like me. You're not necessarily. You don't promote what you do as such. It's not about that.
Talk about it. I just talk about the journey sometimes.
But ultimately, people get to know you in a way that I don't know. I think with video content, with audio content, when you're speaking so freely in these conversations, you can't really hide from who you are, your character, your ethics, your integrity. It all comes through, good or bad, the authenticity.
Absolutely.
And people buy people, that better than anyone. So people will listen to your podcast and like, your training's phenomenal. I know that. I've seen behind the curtain of your company, but it's your values that will draw people in initially. Absolutely. Yes, you need to have the quality service to back that all up. But, I would like to think people will listen to your podcast and they're like, I want to see more of what James Fleming's all about. And they go down a bit of a rabbit hole. But it is very demoralising in those early days, especially when I launched the Ricky Hatton one and I'm thinking I'm going to be getting... I remember...
I've made it.
Well, the first time we got above 200 downloads, I was shouting from the rooftops because it was such a slog to even get to that point. But we didn't monetise the podcast for a good 2 years, something like that, maybe. So yeah, it was interesting. But like you say, the main ROI for me was the relationships. And, you alluded earlier to basically going through massive amounts of shit and trauma over the last 18 months. I would go as far as to say that my podcast, one, relaunching it, but I'm talking about the relationships and the learnings that I gained from the original podcast saved my life.
Aye. I would wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think when we opened this conversation up with, you've got grit coming out your arse. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think when you've been doing the podcasts, your subconscious mind has been on fire. You've been listening to some of the most successful business people, sports people on the planet talking about the shit ride they've had. Not just that, how they've been able to overcome that with the mindset and the habits that they have. And your brain's obviously been like absorbing all that information. And when the shit hit your fan, and what would have probably finished, I mean this respectfully, would finish most people, it didn't.
No.
Actually, this new Ellie appeared, this new improved version, even though there was nothing wrong with the previous. I think that you're a different person now.
I'm 100%. You know what? There was so much of what I used to say before. It's not that I was disingenuous, but there was so much of what I used to say before that I wholeheartedly believe in. But it's only now that I step back, I'm like, there's just so many more layers to this game of life that I don't think I mean, it does sound cliche. I have learned more in the last 18 months than I have learned in my entire life. My entire life, in so many different ways. But ultimately, you said something, I think it's in your book. The name of your podcast is Success or Excuses. Now, success is very subjective, and there's a lot of similar threads in the themes from your podcast and my own. We're sharing a lot of the same messages. But you talk about success is when your expectations and your reality are in alignment.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be different for everyone.
Everybody.
And I am now living a very, very successful life. And good is the enemy of great. And I realised that my life, although a lot of it was smoke and mirrors, unbeknown to me, was good. It certainly wasn't great, but it was just good enough that I don't think I would have pushed to do some of the things that I'm doing now. And for example, health and fitness, right? People would have probably looked at my social media and thought I was a lot healthier than I actually was. And it wasn't that I was unhealthy, But again, good is the enemy of great. I've been
Absolutely.
threatening. Yeah, I was
That's good enough.
doing a bit of running. I
Yeah.
doing a little bit of yoga. I've been threatening to do strength training for years. I would do breath work periodically. Was I doing that as part of my routine? No, because I was going to do. There was always a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was always making
There's always an
excuses.
excuse.
There was always an excuse.
Absolutely, because it was good enough.
It was good enough, and
But
I
it
was kind of
never
feeling okay.
Je ne sais quoi, isn't it? No.
So you don't realise until you're feeling really good how shit you were kind of feeling before, because you've never necessarily experienced that feeling that you've achieved through doing whatever it is you've done. So yeah, I was quite consistent with my ice baths, but there were so many things that I wasn't doing. I've been following biohackers, and I've got friends that are biohackers for years. And yeah, I had a water filter, and I did bits. I didn't have fluoride in my toothpaste.
So it's your fault that I've got to blame for our water filter and all that now, Venus? Is it your fault? Right,
yeah,
okay.
I'm an expensive person to be friends with. Everyone says that. But you know what? I think because I've went through all this shit, it's made me realise that, well, firstly, I'm not allowing myself to make any excuses. It's only me on my own now with the 3 children. I am responsible for everything in my life, the good, the bad and the indifferent. So therefore, when I look in that accountability mirror, you've just got nowhere to hide, James.
Absolutely. I love it.
And-
Accountability mirror.
Well,
Number 1.
you can't bullshit yourself. You can bullshit everyone else.
Yes.
You can bullshit on social media. You can bullshit to your entire network. You can bullshit to your family. You cannot bullshit yourself. And I think when you're going through shit, Gary and I were just talking about this before we hit record, I now need to access every tool in my toolbox just to maintain that level, because life is still throwing grenades left, right and centre. I can't control what happens externally. The only thing that I've got any control over is what happens internally. And one of the most powerful lessons I've really deeply resonated with over the last 18 months is that happiness is a choice. Happiness comes from within. It's not something that anyone else is responsible for other than me. And so many people have asked me how I'm still standing, but what choice have you got? You know, failure for me is not an option, and there's no way I have been through everything that I've been through over the last 18 months not to become a success. And when I say a success, I don't mean to rebuild the life I previously have. It is to create something brand new, improved. Absolutely,
100%. I wanna talk about something, and I know you're a big believer in manifesting stuff, right? We're obviously both in that world. A lot of people sometimes think woo-woo, right? Because things like the book, like is it the source or the secret, right? So and the way that they talk about, if you just believe it and it comes true, and there's a lot more to it than that, right? But I know we're both big believers in manifestation, and I know in your life magic happens, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it, right? You just say something, you start to believe it, and you're like, oh, wait to tell you this, and you're like, fuck. Go and talk us through, what is it, Ellie? How is it you're resonating a certain, what is it? What is it that allows you to be in that position? Even considering the shit, you're still able to just rise, and I think it might lead back to what you just talked about.
So you know what's interesting? When all this happened initially, it's not like I was leaping out of bed and quoting Tony Robbins. You know, just for full transparency, I lost absolutely everything. My marriage, my home, my car. I lost friends. I lost my business. I lost my podcast. My dad was financially ruined and losing his home. I was on my absolute arse, James. I was having heart palpitations. I mean, it's difficult now. I don't want to dwell on it, but I don't want to skirt over it either. Agreed. Because it was pretty dark. You know, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I had a tic. I was convulsing. I was in a bad way. And I don't think you can go through all that without experiencing huge amounts of stress and trauma. But as the weeks progress into months, and also as a mother of 3, you don't really have the luxury of feeling sorry for yourself. You've got to take direct action.
Yep.
What I started to realise very quickly, because I lost all sources of income, you know, I wasn't making any money. Everything I had was attached to my previous life, you know, from going and thinking you're a millionaire on paper, you know, your assets and everything else.
Thousands and thousands in the bank and moving to Dubai, and we won't get into detail, but that whole
living the life, to going bankrupt, companies going into liquidation, owing millions of pounds to people and everything that kind of comes with that. But I realised very quickly that there was a lot of people, I'm surrounded by high performance people, and people were fantastic. They'd rally round, they would support you, they would comfort you, they would offer to buy you a coffee. However, life is brutal, right?
Yes.
Life is brutal. And ultimately, even on a subconscious level, the majority of people are always looking at what's in it for them.
Absolutely.
And on paper, I lost all my commercial value. And whilst I was receiving support and empathy, I did identify that if I didn't change my energy, if I didn't make myself valuable again, if I didn't believe in myself again, I was never going to be able to rebuild. And that's when I started mindfully and proactively trying to shift my energy. Again, you know, it's pretty basic stuff, but just making sure I was getting some fresh air. I wasn't doing ice baths in the middle of all that. I wasn't doing it. I wasn't going out running. I wasn't on social media. I wasn't doing any of it.
It took you time to get back to that.
It was very, very gradual. But I did start to go out for walks. And something else I did, I wasn't interested in podcasts or audiobooks. You know, I was quite scunnered with all of it, to be honest. I was like, fuck you, universe. Fuck you, Tony Robbins. Fuck you, everyone. You bunch of dicks. You've lied to me. You've duped me. I've been trying my best for all these years.
I'm a good person.
I'm a woe is me. But, you know, at the end of the day, you can have success or you can have excuses. And I'm not a victim. You know, I am absolutely not a victim. I will never class myself as a victim.
Damn tootin' you're not.
I absolutely not. But one of the things that I did do was start to listen to high vibration music, empowering music. I started to do something that I learned about on a retreat a couple of years before, which I'd never adopted. I just thought it was a load of bullshit, to be honest with you. When you're doing like intuitive dance, looking at yourself in the mirror whilst you're dancing, which is quite an uncomfortable thing to do.
Imagine.
Feels very egotistical. And I would recommend to anyone, just try it and you will feel
is it like looking
weird.
at your own soul? What does it feel like? I'm going to try it now.
So we talk a lot, or people talk a lot about self-love. Now, I've always struggled with that, if I'm being honest with you. You take it to extremes.
I've not got a problem with that. I love me.
I'm getting there now, I would say, for the first time in my life. I've been good at self-care, but not necessarily self-love. Now, some people think there's the same thing. I don't. I've always been able to take myself for a massage or give myself time to go and have a bubble bath. But that's different to self-love.
Absolutely.
And I remember Barry Hearn, actually, Eddie's dad, who was the founder of Matchroom, saying to me, you know, I've interviewed him and we've spoke quite a few times, that he used to look in the mirror once a day as an absolute minimum and talk to himself and actually have like a full-on conversation. And he was just saying that was the biggest thing that he did to work on his own mindset and to create, he didn't call it self-love, but ultimately that's what he was talking about. So I started doing that every single night until it became comfortable. And one of the reasons I was so mindful about my energy was because of a previous conversation I'd had with a podcast guest. Now, as a mum, my kids will always be, you know this, you know, as a parent, my number one priority.
Absolutely.
Now, there was a lot of things happening in my life and the children's life that felt completely out of my control, but how I showed up and how I presented to them was something that was down to me and
to
me alone.
Off to you, honestly. You were incredible.
Well,
incredible. But I suppose, like, I was going to almost make an excuse for how incredible I think you were, because the buck stopped at your feet, really, wasn't it? You're the mammy.
Well, you know yourself, when you're around somebody that's stressed, it creates stress.
Absolutely.
Now, by me keeping my shit together,
your energy goes, your energy flows.
Yeah, where focus goes, energy flows.
That's
I'm a true believer in that.
100%.
Now, if I'd have lost my shit, if I'd have been scared, if I was in panic mode about the fact that I didn't know where we're going to live and I didn't know how I was going to be able to put food on the table, then my kids would have been in absolute meltdown mode. They would have been going through another level of trauma. Now, they didn't need to experience that.
Correct.
There was nothing that they could do to influence the situation that we were in. And I remember a podcast guest called Dean Forbes. He's an incredible guy. He's out there closing hundreds of millions of pounds worth of deals. He's an absolute legend. And he was talking about his own childhood and the fact that his mum he'd come home from school and the electricity would have been cut off because she couldn't afford to pay the bills, and how she made such fun out of the situation. They all had their own little torches and they used to play hide and seek and they used to play games and really lean into the fact that they didn't have any electricity. And he used to say that they'd only ever have like 3 or 4 ingredients in the cupboards or in the fridge, and she'd say, right, what can we make today, to him and his siblings. And he said in hindsight there was very limited options on what they could have made, but they didn't. Yeah, they didn't recognise that at the time. And I just thought that story was so powerful, because a lot of mums or parents in that situation understandably would have folded, and that would have made the kids feel, you know, that level of stress 100%. And what have you that they didn't have. But the fact that he describes his childhood, even living under those circumstances, which were far from ideal, as happy and carefree, stayed with me. And when I was at the local council office registering myself as homeless, I had these stories to think back on. And I've interviewed multiple people who have bounced back from bankruptcies, who've been on the verge of suicide. But it was that particular story about how his mum showed up for him and his brothers and sisters that just helped me to be able to carry myself, because everything is about energy.
Absolutely.
And
I wholeheartedly agree.
And to me, that's probably my biggest success over the last 18 months, that it's not been without its stresses and challenges, especially for my eldest daughter, who was pulled out of school and had more understanding about what was going on. And, you know, anyone who's had to tell their kids that they're going through a divorce will know that there's obviously going to be backlash from that. But I can say, hand on heart, that we have navigated this with as little stress in terms of the children as was humanly possible in that situation, which was the only bit that I had any control over.
Absolutely. Absolutely incredible. I want to get back to the vibration.
Okay.
I want to get back to the vibration because, I say all the time, right, that I very rarely see negativity. Very, very rarely. Because I don't allow it. I don't actually allow it. Well, even in social media, right? I very, very rarely ever see negativity, because I just don't vibrate in that level. I just don't allow it. I don't allow that into my life, and it's almost like, am I just unaware, or what is it that why am I allowing myself, or how am I allowing myself to resonate way up here and not see all this other stuff? But I just don't. I don't know what it is. I just don't. What's your take on that?
It's exactly the same, and it's detachment from the negativity, which is very different to apathy. It's about focusing on the things that we can control. And actually, I kind of learned this, and I've obviously had it reiterated over the last 18 months, but during COVID, I found myself going down a very negative spiral during that time, because I was seeing things that I didn't agree with. I was becoming awake, to use that overly used expression, about some of the corruption and the wrongdoings that go on in the world. And I was spending 6 and 8 hours at a time on Telegram, looking at links and looking at videos and seeing the most horrific, horrendous things. And all that ended up happening, James, was that my own mental health got really negatively impacted by it, which meant I wasn't showing up as a good parent. I wasn't performing to the best of my abilities at work. And the conversations I was having with people in my network were basically like, oh my God, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Spreading this fear, spreading this negativity, and that ripple effect that is actually the complete opposite of what I stand for. I want to be a force for good. I want to be a high vibration person that's leaving a positive impact. And that's when I sort of realised I had a couple of weeks where I didn't engage at all with any of the social media platforms, or I sort of not blocked, but cast aside some of the people in my network who were fear-mongering. And it wasn't that what they were saying wasn't true, but it was the fact that I was allowing my energy to be impacted every time I was clicking on one of these links or reading one of these articles, and it was serving absolutely no one. And you're we've obviously spoke about the power of podcasts. I know part of your daily routine every day is to listen to an audiobook or to listen to a podcast, but this all, energy is something that we can manufacture.
Absolutely.
Being positive is something that we need to work on. And again, going back to that good life but not great life I had before, I wasn't very consistent with some of the habits that I have now adopted and that are non-negotiable for me. I do my affirmations. Now, people's morning routines can differ. I know, for example, you do the gym in the afternoon and that's what works for you.
In the morning, you go a walk.
You go on your walk.
Yeah.
It depends on people's circumstances. As a single parent, I didn't have the option of getting up and leaving my house early on. You adapt things to your particular life. Whatever your standards are, whatever your non-negotiables are, you set them, but you stick to them, because again, the only person that's going to hold you to account ultimately is that person in the mirror. But it's the habits and actions, going back to the whole point about the law of attraction, it's the habits and the actions that you take that create the frequency. People are not born positive or negative. It's quite easy to spiral. We all do it. If we ever fall off the wagon, which happens periodically, and we neglect our exercise, or maybe we go on holiday and we don't have access to a gym, or we're traveling, or whatever it is, and our daily routine gets broken, and then maybe one day turns into 2 days, and we might end up eating shite that we wouldn't normally eat.
A bit of shite.
We've got to have our cheat days, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But these are the things that do affect our energy, and ultimately I believe that we're all exactly where we deserve to be in life. And I'm saying that as somebody who's very much at the bottom and rebuilding.
Yes.
I take full ownership, full accountability for exactly where I am and exactly where I'm going. But if you don't believe in yourself first and foremost, how can you expect other people to believe in you? Before you start anything, before you start working towards any goal, you have to believe that goal is achievable. And that's visualization. That's why people like Michael Phelps, he used to go to sleep dreaming about this stuff.
Absolutely.
He used to visualize the swim. He used to visualize every stroke, the pushing off, the turning,
the breathing, the
all
whole
of it.
race. That's right.
And there's been science-backed experiments to back this up, hasn't there?
Scientifically fact now.
Yeah.
That's fact.
Yeah.
You don't have a good picture of what success looks like. How the bloody hell are you supposed to get there?
Yeah, and it's really strange because, I can just give you so many examples in terms of the manifestation. I had just said on a Zoom call to somebody that if one of the things that I lost, very tragic, in the divorce was the ice bath. No, we had one of those inflatable ice baths, and it got completely battered in the move. And to be quite frank, I don't think I maintained it anyway.
Yeah.
I know where my skill set lies, and I just,
That was his job.
No, that was his job.
We've got our jobs, don't worry, I get it. I've got my job.
You have to empty the water every couple of days and clean it out and things like that and fill it up. And, I'm going to make excuses here, James,
It's
but
okay.
that wouldn't have been something
Listen,
that I'd have
sometimes
done.
an excuse is actually all right because you're like, that's no my job, so that's my excuse, and I'm happy with that.
Especially if you can come up with a solution.
Listen, see if you're going to make an excuse, live by it. And
Live-
that's all right
live
then.
by the excuse.
I'm all right with that.
That's podcast number 2, success or excuses. But if you are going to make one, this is plan
Live by
B.
it. Look in the mirror, because that's whose fault it is.
So basically, I was on this Zoom call and I said to my friend, I really want an ice bath, but I need one of these all singing, all dancing ice baths.
That does it all for you.
That does it all for you. It's got the self-regulated temperature.
Filters, clean.
Yes, you only need to clean them out every 6 months or so, empty the water. You can just put a wee bit of chlorine in and away you go. I said, but I have not got, these cost $3,000 upwards.
Yeah.
I says, I've not got $3,000 at the minute. And if I did, there's far better uses for it than an ice bath. Mm-hmm. That's a reality. I said, but I need to get myself one. So I didn't have a vision board. I didn't have a process for it, but I put it out there to the universe. I said it out loud. And within a week, a very good friend of mine rang me up and said, Elle, look, I don't know if this is going to be of any interest to you, but we sell, it's actually a hot tub company. She says, we sell ice baths. We're really looking to start promoting them more. We can deliver nationally. I just wondered, I know you were quite into your ice baths. Would you have any use for one? If we send you an ice bath and install it, would you mind just giving us some shout outs in your podcast, maybe tagging us in some social media posts? And, that would be a mutually beneficial collaboration. Within a week, James, within a week, I said, well, yes, I'll take one off your hands. And I can just give you so many examples of things like that. So I'm a great believer when you put yourself in the right frequency and when you take the right actions, the right environment, you feed your mind, your body and the soul the right ingredients, success is inevitable.
Absolutely. Well, what's the saying? If you're in the company of 5 highly successful people, you'll be the 6th.
Exactly that.
If you're in the presence of 5 really wealthy people, you'll become the 6th.
Yeah.
And it is that, and I think, and I don't even, I'm not sure. I'm even going to just put my own mindset or thought process. I think it's probably down to the fact that the language they're using, the way that they talk, the way that they think, the way that they act, and we then model those behaviours and we start to resonate on that level. So we actually bring ourselves up.
We do.
And it's almost inevitable. I know that might sound mental, right? But isn't it? It's almost inevitable that you will become that person. And I think that's what success and excuses is all about. Because a lot of people might sit and listen to those really highly successful people and say, aye, it's all right for you, but...
Insert excuse.
I can learn so much from you. So, isn't it? It's kind of almost that, you've got to believe in yourself. I'm going to go back to that belief stuff. You've really got to believe in yourself and look in the mirror, because if shit's happening, it's not going your way. That's whose fault it is.
What can I learn from this? Everything is about perspective. Now, you said something when you came on my podcast, and I said to you afterwards, you need to be careful, James, because I've pretty much said those exact words. I've stood on stage before in front of 600 people and said, you can strip me of my properties, you can take my assets, you can take my money, you can strip me of everything, but what you cannot take from me is my mindset. You can't take my resilience. You can't take my work ethic. You can't take the relationships that I've already formed with people. I know with absolute certainty that if I had to start from scratch, I would be able to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to say it, but I agree 100%.
Those words came out of my mouth.
The last time.
Well, you know what though? Everything again is about perspective.
Yeah.
I choose to accept the challenge. I've got a very, very unique opportunity to walk the walk now, very publicly, again, through choice, because I believe in this stuff. Mm-hmm. I live and breathe this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm surrounded by incredible people. I know with absolute certainty that I will be able to eclipse any of my previous achievements. Yep. But my definition of success is It's changed a lot, and it had already changed prior to this happening. I used to say, and I still stand by this, relationships are the highest form of currency.
You've always said that, haven't you?
I've always said that, and my
but
God.
You actually started a network event about high net worth individuals as well, didn't you? About that whole... Yeah. So you've always been a huge believer, and I love that. I love that.
It is true. And, I feel blessed in so many ways. What this process has really taught me is just to focus on what's in my control.
Yeah.
There's no point in worrying about what may or may not happen. You really have to extract joy in any situation, within reason. Happiness isn't something that you achieve when you hit the next milestone or when you get to a certain level. It's today.
Yeah.
And I know deep down that what I've went through will help. It is already helping so many more people than I would have been able to impact had this not happened to me, James. And as you know, I've had previous podcast episodes that have went totally viral.
Yeah.
Totally viral. We've had millions of views and downloads. We've had press coverage worldwide.
Yeah.
But I can hand on heart say that I got more messages from my relaunch episode, sharing my story, sharing what happened to me than any other episode.
That must have been a tough conversation when you did that first time, and it was like an interview type thing, wasn't it? The very first one about the story.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, just listening to it was a tough gig.
You rang me up in tears.
Aye, it's a tough gig.
It was horrible. So, I need to do a follow up really with my friend Tony, who is also a podcaster that did the interview with me, and it's quite funny because she just thought, I'm not the best with directions anyway, but the podcast studio was about a mile away from the house I was living at the time. And I took her all around the houses. We went all over Doncaster. And she's saying, are you sure this is the right way? I'm going, actually, no, I think we've taken a wrong turn. And it took about 40 minutes to do this 1 mile journey. And it was because my anxiety was through the roof. In the past, I've always spoke, as you have, with complete honesty about my past. I used to speak about mental health. I've spoke about postnatal depression. I've spoke about being made redundant. I've spoke about a brief period of time where I claimed job seekers allowance and how that made me feel. And a lot of people took inspiration from that because we all love a rags to riches story. But the difference this time round was that I was sharing it in real time.
Yes.
I was still very much going through it.
Right in the middle of it?
Well, those first few months I wouldn't have been capable of recording a podcast. But I was registered as homeless at the point of recording that interview. I hadn't came out the other side. I was still very unsure how I was going to provide for my family. I had no idea how the relaunch was going to be received by the public.
It was a terrifying feeling.
Oh, it was the scariest thing I've ever done. Scariest thing I've ever done. Even now I'm only on Instagram. I burnt the rest of my social media to the ground. I had hundreds of thousands of followers.
You were massive on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
In fact, your posts used to have regularly thousands and hundreds of thousands of comments and likes and shares and regularly.
Yeah.
And your glamorous photos and all that.
Yeah, no, you get to see me behind the scenes. I'm just catfishing everyone. I've spoke about that before. It's like you go and get one professional photo shoot a year and the rest of the time I'm just a total skank with my unwashed hair and my leggings and the same jumper on all week, sort of, posting my professional photos, making out like I'm some sort of glamour. This is a glamour model, but that means something totally different.
Absolutely does. Don't get down that road.
That's how I'm getting my money.
Listen, Ellie, we're getting near the end. I ask most of my guests this. If somebody's listening, and in your situation, maybe they're a business owner, and I know you've spoken to a lot of business owners that's really hit rock bottom recently as well. What's your 3 pieces of advice? What's the 3 things that you're going to look at them and just say, this is what you need to know? So, I think it's Winston Churchill that said, failure is bumbling from one excuse to the next without any loss of enthusiasm. It is very hard to beat
the person that refuses to quit.
Yes.
Okay? And that doesn't necessarily mean you don't need to pivot, or the thing that you're working on doesn't need adapting, or you need to change course.
My whole business has been a series of pivots and adaptations.
Yeah. But just do not quit.
Yeah.
Just keep going, first and foremost. Second piece of advice I would give people: be very conscious of who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yes, love it.
I think that's very, very important. Your network truly is your net worth in any aspect of your life. And I'm not just talking about financial.
Yeah.
If you want to be healthier, then you surround yourself
healthy
with
people.
biohackers, with athletes, whatever else. You know, the first time I signed up for a half marathon, I was chatting with, you know, some of the friends I had at the time. They were just like, oh my God, like I couldn't even do a 5K. I didn't need to hear that. I needed to start hanging around with triathletes and marathon runners and people who are breaking world records. People that were not minimising my achievement at all, but making me realise that that's more than achievable, as opposed to surrounding myself with my other group of friends who struggle to run a bath.
And you done your half marathon quite recently. I know I'm going to go off track here. You did a half marathon recently, didn't you?
Oh fucking hell, yeah, did I?
That's why I asked.
Totally unprepared.
I know.
You know that I wasn't prepared for that.
A tough gig, by the way.
So I didn't know that it was hills. I didn't know, James.
Well, you think you're going to go and run in a flat for a 16 mile?
Yeah, well,
no. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, well, apparently not. But this one was particular. So it's one of the toughest. I didn't know this. It was one of the toughest half marathon routes in the UK. When I've then told people about it, they're like, oh yeah, such and such course. That's so we started this half marathon, and they're like, straight away you had to run to the bottom of the hill and then run back up it before you even did the first loop. And I looked at the person next to me. I was like, "Did you know about this?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's it's renowned for it." I was just like, "Great." And that's where the pain and misery started and continued for the next 2+ hours.
I went way off track there. Sorry.
So there you go.
So that's number one and number two. What's your third?
Number two, number three. So
number one was
don't quit.
Don't quit. Number two was people. Surround yourself with. Your network is your net worth.
Yeah, your network is your net worth, and just get clear. Get clear on what you want to achieve. Write it down. Set yourself goals. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. Don't compare yourself to other people. Yeah. They can be, for me, they were quite micro goals that I was achieving.
Yeah.
Sometimes success can just be getting out of bed and brushing your teeth, depending on where you're at.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
And
then the next day, a little bit better. Because I'm a huge believer, right? And can I be better tomorrow than I am today?
Marginal gains.
Yes. Do that then.
Small, insignificant changes that end up compounding for massive, massive results. And if necessary, and I had to do this, just stop following people, come off of social media if you need to, stop comparing yourself to what other people are doing and their definition of success, because it truly is subjective. Not everyone wants to be a multimillionaire. Not everyone wants to run a company with hundreds of staff.
Because it's hard work.
Just don't do it. No, don't do it.
My hair used to be coloured Ellie's 5 years ago.
But be clear on what your definition of success is. Take a step back and then break it down. And it's that whole thing. How do you eat an elephant? One chunk at a time.
Ellie, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. An absolute pleasure, and I still look up to you because I think what you've achieved and where you've been and where you're going, it's a pleasure to call you an acquaintance and a friend.
Aww.
Thank you so much.
Bless you. Thanks for having me, James. It's a privilege.
Halfway through the year, yeah!
The best is yet to come.
The best.
Well, actually, no.
Well, it's only good in health now. Come on, what are you talking about? Self-belief here. Listen, Ellie, honestly, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, James.
It's been brilliant.